Hello, this is Barry from Blanchardstown Library, part of the Fingal network of libraries. Last week I chatted to Mindfulness Teacher Rita O'Donovan, who's a great friend of the library, who's been with us many, many times, and we spoke all about mindfulness and what we can do at home to help us through this difficult situation we're all going through. So how are you, Rita?
I'm great, Barry, and thanks again for the opportunity to have this chat. It's such an important time now to bring in this whole subject in a very, I'd say, simple way, which mindfulness is. It can have different layers to it, but for most of us, just on that first layer of understanding, how it impacts on our lives and what it can do to support us, specifically developing our own self-aware skills. Now, I think that's the most meaningful thing we can do while we're in this lockdown, for want of a better word. I think I mentioned it last time. It is so important. It is to me that kind of silver lining around that cloud that we can, and we have the time. So that's really, again, I think what we'll be chatting about, and being tender in our understanding on how we develop as we go through this.
And you're saying, I heard you use the word opportunity there. I mean, it at the moment, I suppose a lot of people are saying this as a difficult situation, a stressful situation, and it is. But at the same time, there is maybe an opportunity, as you say, to work on some of our own tools to help us through this time. And that's what we're going to look at today with you, are the two, I think you call them tools for tender times. And maybe you could explain to us a little bit what you mean by that.
I'm going to make this very basic to begin with. The self-aware skills I'm talking about, it's not looking out so much, but rather saying, I'm getting to know, I'm educating myself around myself, because this is really an important time. Our hospitals, our medical staff, there's a lot of pressure out there. And so if we can come even 50% towards understanding how our mind, our body, our emotions, how do they actually work? Mm-hmm. What makes me me? What makes me reactive? They're really important questions. And I discovered with people who have been very stressed, people who've been challenged by illnesses, that when they ask these kind of deeper questions, it's an acknowledgement of understanding myself at a more significant level, I think I would say. Mm-hmm. I would start off, Barry, by just mentioning, let's say, the body. This is the body, this is the mind, this is what we walk around in every day. But sometimes we're not close enough. Mm-hmm. We're kind of out there, we're not close enough. So the tenderness I'm talking about is learning the skill of coming a little bit closer. So how does my body let me know? I mean, when you look at the amazing intelligence in the body, just even to stop and think about that, heartbeat, the lungs, all these organs, and it gets on all the time without too much of our intervention. But as we hone in the skills, just from the body point of view, let's say the language, if I'm thirsty, if I'm tired, fatigued, if I'm hungry, what's happening to the body? It's talking to you, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it lets you know.
It's referring, it's saying, can you listen, I'm hungry. It's saying, can you listen to me, I'm cold, I need to put something warm on, or I'm too hot. So here is the simple language. And when we settle down a little bit more and listen to that simple language, we say, already there's the first step. I know when I'm hungry. Mm-hmm. I know when I've overeaten. And I think, should have had all that. So there's a communication going on already that we understand, where we just have to bring a little bit more conscious awareness into it. And what I love about the mindfulness concept of it, and my own learning in particular, was understanding the body, and then that's it, biggie. To understand that sometimes the thought patterns are overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And the self-awareness would say, take a step back and just start to notice. Your mind is kind of overwhelmed, it's anxious. So there's a step. I can actually do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm playing a very important role, an essential role in really learning to listen, to observe, and to notice. And we take it step by step, and we take it very gently. I may be fine this morning, you may get up, I might get up. What happens? I may be in a low mood. It's the way it goes. We're like the waves. Sometimes they're crashing, sometimes they're going easy. That's how it works. So I pay attention a little bit to, I'm in low mood. How do I know I'm in low mood? There's that kind of sense of, it's that kind of a day. Everything seems grey. Everything is miserable or a little bit darker. I often say the lens over the eyes become a little bit darker. That grey day. So these are simple concepts and processes that really start to bring that whole self of awareness into say, I'm beginning to notice that. For instance, a small little example. Just before we came on air, I had a glass of water there. Went to turn to do something, hit the water, went all over the place, over notes, over everything. I thought, not now, but it happens. It just happens. So, I have enough of self-aware skills in to say, that's what happens. Maybe the old part of me would have kind of gone into whole anxiety, tension, stress, all of that. So that small little thing like the glass, it's only one little instance. There's so many that happen during our day. But that's an example of how I'm less reactive. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and it's actually something I mentioned before we actually went on air, so to speak, is how we've been doing resilience sessions with Jill Barrett. And I also spoke to Jill about your work, and there's so much overlap. And she spoke about something very similar to what you're saying to me now, about rather than reacting to a situation, learning to stop, even for a few seconds, and then respond rather than react. And we have a tendency to, and I can see a great overlap there.
Yeah, and I love that sense of knowing myself that I'm becoming less reactive. Now, nobody out there did that for me. My self-awareness was able to change that reactive pattern. Now, when you just sit with that for a little while and realize that we have that ability, isn't it quite strikingly amazing that we have nobody actually, I'm doing this for myself. So what am I doing? I'm regulating the homeostasis, the balance in the body by those moments, right? Because if I didn't have the awareness with that situation happening, that could maybe blow up. It might make the day even more miserable and something else will happen. The way it gathers
builds up
momentum. It was a moment. And we call those the pause moments. And that was something I wanted to bring into this talk. I say to people a lot, take as many pause moments as you can. Because you know what? You're starting to, again, bring self-awareness into your day. What's a pause moment? Like that, I may just have a glass of water, I'm just drinking it. It's a pause moment. But it's a deliberate pause moment that I bring into my day at different times. I pause, believe it or not, before I actually eat my food. Why do I do that? Because now my system is more regulated to say, I actually eat my food and digest it at a more, mastate it at a much slower pace. Okay? So what am I doing there? Again, I'm balancing the digestive system. It's simple.
So it just shows that,
and yet all we need... Go ahead.
Yeah, that mindfulness can come into anything. I mean, you can eat mindfully. You can work mindfully. You can, and that's just a great example of it there. Something as simple as eating can be a mindful moment. It doesn't have to be. Everyone thinks of mindfulness as kind of sitting cross-legged on the floor and meditating, which it can be, but it could also be something very simple.
You see, that's what I love about this whole process. because I'm living the day and I'm either mindless or I'm mindful. Now, a lot of the time, as we spoke about before, what's happening is we're 80-90% in autopilot. This switch is going to change. This is our opportunity to leave autopilot more and to be more consciously present. So, the fact that I understand now, because I'm more mindful in looking, tasting, the food, and really getting together with, okay, this is really what I'm doing now. It brings a whole different dimension. You're bringing your self-awareness. You start to figure out that I like, that I don't like, that I don't need as much of. I don't need as much, because if I'm masticating my food and taking longer to chew it, guess what? I'm full up more. So what? I don't need as much food. I mean, how good is that? They're simple, but they make such a profound difference. So rather than that outward flow, we're gently learning to bring it back into these moments of things that we're doing all day. Another step I'd like to just introduce is to educate ourselves. Now, this is ad nauseum, I say it all the time, but I will have to say something. When I work with people that were challenged with their health, when they really got the understanding, the reading of the importance of understanding their own central nervous system, that made a huge impact. That I can say for sure. So again, if people are interested, even the simplicity, I'm knowing when the central nervous system is on high. We have the two branches, as most people know, the sympathetic, parasympathetic. What's getting most this morning, today? If it's a sympathetic, I may be anxious. I find my speech is very quick. I find my heartbeat a little bit more rapid. The breathing changes, and I'm out of sorts. So what about if we were to turn that tool of awareness back in and say, I'm noticing that. Just that. Am I aware of that? Just that line. Am I aware of that? Already that light of awareness is changing because you're activating something of it, rather than letting that sympathetic fight, flight, freeze take it over. Okay? Now, I say this over and over. Why? Because we need to hear it. The central nervous system is highly conditioned over millions of years. And here we are, we're trying to bring it into some balance, and it's very doable. And again, it's the knowing, and I would start at the simplest way. When I start to settle down a little bit and know when I'm reactive, what's happening? The nervous system is in fight and flight. So not to complicate it and go too deep into it. And linked in with that is another of my favorite subjects, and that's called, I love to talk about the vagus nerve. Now, I think it was Stephen Porges, the neuroscientist, that developed this about 2 or 3 years ago. And he really understood that they call it, by the way, the wandering nerve. It's one of the most important nerves in the body, and it attaches itself to everything. So how important that we know a little bit about that vagus nerve. It's so important that we understand, because it attaches itself to everything, all the organs, everything from the liver, the heart, the lungs, the spleen. So what if I were to say to you that we have the ability to regulate that nervous system? Because when it's not toned, we are actually in a very nervous disposition when we're in the other part of the central nervous system. And so Stephen Porges understood that, he saw the nervous system like a ladder. Where am I on that ladder? If I'm very down and miserable, I'm down the end. And that goes into the old limbic brain. And, not to get too complicated, but just to understand, I say to people, imagine this most important nerve is attached to most things, most of the organs and everything in the body. So you would say, well, how do I tone it? That's the next question, isn't it? How do I tone it? It's just amazing, because again, as Porges himself understood, a simple breathing exercise. And I was talking to a group there the other day, and we were discussing that. And it was interesting because all of our breathings, yours may be different to mine. So it's regulating it and not putting an effort or too much stress on the breath. But it's so much simpler. I'm breathing in, and so you, right now. Okay? And how we tone and regulate the vagus is just, I'd say to people, just use an out breath in a much slower capacity. So I'm breathing in. And then I'm breathing out. I might count 1, 2, 3, 4. So already here I am changing that fight and flight into something that's regulating the body. Okay? And I just love the idea that every day I have the opportunity to understand this system a little bit more. A great concept, again, it's so simple. You wake up in the morning, you're cold water, you splash your face with cold water. That's the stimulant again. It's stimulating the vagus nerve. Isn't that amazing? Whatever it is about the cold water hitting the face stimulates that nerve. And again, you're regulating. And the other concept that they've come up with, or understanding that Portia was talking about, was humming.
Oh.
And I suppose when you look back to the monks and back then and the maybe there was something back then in that kind of humming that they understood that was stimulating this. So I don't know, maybe you're having a good day and you're washing the dishes or you're walking or whatever. The humming, actually, I find it fascinating because the nerve goes right through, into the glands and up towards the head and the vocal cords. So the humming is stimulating again for that vagus nerve. Now we can all do that. We can splash our face with cold water. We can certainly hum if we feel up to it. But for me, I just keep turning that concept back in and saying, I'm actually regulating my system. I just love the idea of it. And the simple ways that we can do that, between the pausing, between the diaphragmatic breathing, and it's not a huge thing. We just take moments, and we take other moments and say, I can do this. Then we can go into autopilot and do and forget and what have you. Then we gather again into the self-awareness. Yeah.
And are there any particular exercises people could do at home to tone this nerve?
That's what I would say there is, for me, first thing in the morning, the toning for me is the ice cold water splashing the face.
Okay.
That's already, I'm not actually just saying this works, I know it does, but it's scientifically proven. So whatever it is about cold water hitting maybe it's the skin, the nerves on the skin, it regulates and it tones. The humming, I think years ago, I remember my own mother doing stuff and she'd be humming away. Again, there's the toning of the vocal cords. And just remember, I'd often say to people, own your organs. It seems like I say to people, how many organs or what organs can you name in the body? And everybody kind of pauses because we have this concept of, well, it's something out there, it's not here. So this is mindful, a way of saying, this is what I'm doing for myself. Imagine you're already connecting in with the digestive system, your immune system. Everything is being, brought into that homeostasis. If we want to, and I call that educating ourselves about ourselves. Who was it that said, know thyself? Socrates?
Socrates, yeah.
I think it was, and they were wise words, but we've forgotten, Barry, we're outside ourselves quite a lot, and the stimulus, to be entertained, and all of that now is kind of calming down, and I call this an opportunity.
Yeah, and just to give maybe a practical example there, you say about know thyself and being aware of your own body, and everybody, I think, has different, I suppose, signals that maybe lets them know something's not quite right and it's time to take that mindful moment and stop. For me, I can feel it sometimes in my stomach, or I can feel it just under the rib cage. In a more extreme times, if I get a mouth ulcer, that's often a sign to me, oh, you know what, you're doing too much. It's time to slow down. So it's getting to know your body signals, getting that awareness, and then we can take that mindful moment.
And start even on the basics. Listening. I know when I'm hungry. I know when my body is tired and fatigued. I may ignore it, but mindfulness and awareness says, can you pay attention? What about if I'm overstimulated mentally? What about if I get to know that, if I choose to maybe watch a film late at night, it will have an effect? They're simple things, but we actually forget them. If I'm on the phone late at night to someone and there's a lot of conversation going on, that's a huge stimulus in the mental field. And if I think I can go and sleep after that, the chances are I won't. But, the self-awareness will make you pause, Barry. It'll pull in and make you pause and say, hold on a minute. I might, shorten a phone call to maybe 15 minutes and pause and say, that's it. I can catch up another day. So, I'm regulating something around myself that's very doable. I mean, I call let's say using the 5 senses, I call those the greatest gifts we're given. They are, touch, smell, taste, being able to see things. And I would say to people, what do you know about these great 5 senses, these gifts that you've been given? What do you use? What are you aware of during the day? I know I'm very auditory. I know I'm quite visual. I know that. But I also like playing around with the other senses as well. So what's happening when I'm doing that? I'm bringing self-awareness to what's already there. I'm not saying you have to go out and get this or buy that or whatever. I'm saying the beauty of what you have in the given moment is extraordinary. Visually, what have you got? Look what we're looking at recently. Good days, beautiful blue skies, flowers opening up, buds. Don't miss them. Don't miss them. Don't miss, tasting your food. Don't miss it. I've worked with people who were, quite ill and, these were not a given. And they have to be, it takes time to bring back in again. They're gifts, and we just have to forget because on autopilot we say, well, that's breakfast, that's this. I can see that, or I'm not seeing it. When we develop these 5 senses, even mentally we become much clearer. That's what I really want to impart to people. I really start seeing for the first time. Maybe I'm tasting for the first time. Maybe I'm hearing clearly for the first time. Now, when I'm hearing clearly from a mindfulness perspective, I don't tend to want to jump in and finish your sentence. Rather, I can hear what you're saying. And that's a lovely moment because you may say something, but I can get a sense of something a little bit deeper. Maybe you might be troubled and something in the gut says, there's something else. These are the gifts. I can't emphasize enough to use this time as, the most important time that we have. It's like the humans have been locked up for a good reason. The earth is self-healing. And here we have another opportunity.
Yeah, well, we can self-heal too, maybe a little bit during this time. Take the opportunity. So, listen, but before we I suppose, we finish up, could we perhaps do some kind of a little exercise together that people could do at home?
Absolutely. And again, my, whole philosophy is keep it simple. Everything is keep simple. If I could just add with that as well, we do a Sunday afternoon from 2 to 3 where we bring community into Mindfulness Circle. And it's growing. And it's a way for people to connect. It's a way for people to understand, to educate. We often have different topics about mindfulness, what we've been discussing here. And it's a lovely, I'm now part of a community. So that's another step that people can, always take if they need to.
Okay, well, I'll put a link to that in the description of this video, so people can go to your website and learn a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what people are offering. But going back to the breath, I say to people, really settle down into your seat. because this is just it. I feel that the weight of the body, is really important. Settling down and getting with that weight, because that's saying to the body, I'm awake and I'm here. I'm awake and I'm really listening. And I'm turning that light in for a little while. And even if it's only 5 minutes a day, it's a wonderful thing to do. Just 5 or 10 minutes. And I would suggest to most people, there's a lovely sense that meets the body when we just close our eyes for those 5 minutes, if we can. It's kind of like when the world is out there and it's around us, but just for this 5 minutes, I'm settling down. And that gentle body scan, I'm just checking that the head and the neck and the shoulders, I don't even have to change them. I just bring that light of awareness to rest there. And then the body starts to regulate because it knows it's been listened to. And then I get that sense of the torso. And then the pull of gravity, which is really important from the lower part of the torso right down into the legs and to the feet. And, people after a while, when they become more sensitive, they say, yeah, I can really feel the pull of gravity down. And it's very grounding. It's very grounding. And for sure, if you feel you're up in your head too much, ruminating, thoughts going on, just to settle into your seat, bring the energy, it's like a little scope. And you're going from your head down through your neck, through the torso, down, and feel the weight of the body and resting on the chair, that kind of contact, and it has a weight to it. And then you bring that awareness down through the legs, and it meets right down into the feet. Now, I like to do this every day because it gives me a sense of being grounded, and it takes me out of my head for this little while. And then I say to myself, well, okay, I'm resting not in the head, but rather in the feet. And what sensations may be in my feet right now? Sometimes it's tingling, sometimes a little bit cool, but the energy is way down. It's connecting. If you like a tree, isn't it? We connect, we look at the sturdiness of a tree, the roots of a tree. We're giving that sense of being settled and grounded. It's really lovely. It's very simple and it really works. And so when we feel settled into the chair, we just gently pop back into the torso and we have a sense of the heart beating. That's what's happening right now. We settle into that. The miracle of the heart is beating right now. It's not a given, we just wake up to it and be very grateful. And then we notice, very gently again, just a noticing of how is the breath working for me right now. And if I feel very anxious, and I'll know that feeling and sense, as we said, the body will let us know. I bring in a little conscious breathing. You see the tenderness of that. I just drop in and I breathe in from the tip of the nose. I breathe down into the lungs. And I elongate that breath out because I'm working with the vagus nerve. So you go into that rhythm of breathing in. And then it's like a long sigh. I'm breathing out. All the time, remembering the systems are waking up, they're regulating. The nervous system, the immune, the digestive, all of these systems by just this attention, this self-awareness. And one or two more of those breaths, consciously breathing in. And that lovely letting go, sometimes like a sigh. I rest for just a moment at the end of that sigh, and I take another breath in. And the elongation is the lovely, it's the letting go of any tension and the anxiousness. And I hold for just a moment. And then I just settle back again and just notice, let the breathing do its own thing. It's regulating itself now. You've brought the conscious awareness and attention to it. Wonderful. you're feeling anyway, too much in your head or anxious, just to do a few of those breaths. And we take the whole body into consideration now, from the head, noticing the neck area, and just a little awareness around the jaw, perhaps lowering the lower lip just slightly. And moving down into the shoulders. Just slight movement below the skin, resting the awareness right out to the tip of the right and the left shoulder. And we don't have to do anything. Awareness settles. The whole idea of self-awareness is it wants to settle back into its natural state. Now, how lovely is that? Because it's effortless. And we just run the awareness down through the spine. Yeah. All of this self-regulating, so beautiful. And then we bring ourselves up from 3 and 2 and 1 and ready to open our eyes when we're ready to do so.
And I certainly feel a lot more relaxed and grounded and aware now. So, and I
kind of call it a settling. Just a kind of settling. There's what we often call, just to finish on the 5-minute challenge. I love it. It's a 5-minute challenge, and I just put it in at different times here and there during the day where it's like the pause, I stop, and I take in something, what I call taking something good. So it's kind of a good. For me, it might be just watching the kids outside playing. They're just kind of a 5-minute challenge. I mean, 5 minutes isn't a big length of time, but we're growing the good in ourselves, whether it's the blue sky, whether it's the whatever you're eating, all the time. It's beautiful, bringing us back.
And what's lovely about what you just did there as well, the body scan, is you can really do that at any time. You could be sitting on the bus, you could be, you said you could do it while you're watching the kids playing. You can do it, at any time. It's a nice way to ground.
It's there for us. It's there. We just have to wake up. We want to have that interest in ourselves. And I like the idea that I'm playing a big role in my own health. I'm working alongside our medical community, but I'm also part of the whole concept. Because nobody can get to know me as well as I. My breath when it's out of balance, lovely toning of the vagal nerve, all of this. And it's not just me, science is already, it's out there, it's proven. So how good is it for us to tap into this?
Yeah, so and it's a question of taking control of your own, I suppose, as you said last week, taking responsibility as well for your own well-being.
But how does that feel? I mean, just the idea that I actually have a role to play.
Oh, it's very empowering, isn't it?
Isn't it? Just that sense of empowerment. So, I am playing my part and I think, oh right, I am waking up. So this is what consciousness is all about. This is what this self-awareness is about in ourselves. We've just forgotten about it.
And so much of stress, I think, is when you feel that you're not in control. So this is a way of taking back, and even if it's in a very small way, it could be just controlling your breathing or just controlling, I recognise that. Okay,
well,
that means, that's...
Yeah, and we've gone down those lists, and I just love the idea that when I settle down to know that it's not even just breathing, but I'm actually influencing all of these systems to work in my favour. Nobody can get in and do that for you. We have to be the managers of that ourselves.
Well, I'm delighted you used the word influence there, because one great thing I learned at it was actually a training for the libraries, and it was you've probably heard of this, the CIA, which has nothing to do with America. The what can I control, what can I influence, and you've covered both of them. And then A was what do I have to accept. So at the moment we have to just accept the situation for what it is. We've no nothing we can do about it. But what I can influence my body, and I can control things like my breathing and my reactions and responses to certain things. So I'm delighted
And
you
you know
mentioned that.
what? It's kind of, I would suggest to people, take your steps every day, take baby steps, because we're very built in with old habits. They're built in into our biology. And so this is why we have to be tender and not to forget that word tender, because there might be a day when you say, oh, not interested, or that doesn't work. It happens, you know, and then you say, well, okay, you know, I can go back. Today's another new day. Today's another new moment. I'll try it again. I'll look at this video again. You know, I'll hear something different than maybe I heard the first time I played it. It's all there, you know. Join your group and be part of something. It's all around community now. We're all supporting and helping each other. It's you know, there are great things happening.
Yeah.
You know, and we have to embrace the good and the not so good at the moment.
Well, I think embracing
They
the good.
usually balance themselves.
Yeah, I think embracing the good and the positive is a nice way to finish up and go back to what you said at the very beginning is to try and use this as an opportunity to maybe do some self development and self improvement. So and using the tender tips that you've given us and the wonderful body scan exercise, encourage everyone to try that at home. And you said that, as you said a moment ago, this video is available. It's on our YouTube channel. You can go back to it anytime you want. And make sure to watch part 1 as well. It's also on YouTube. You can go back and watch them. And at any time, we'll keep them up.
And you know, if people need to ask questions or whatever, they will always be able to get me in the on my webpage.
Well, like I said, I'll put a link to Rita's website in underneath this video, so anyone, if they want to get in touch with Rita, can do that. So listen, thank you very much, Rita. Again, it's another fantastic information session, and again, I've certainly learned a lot, and I hope people who are watching the video have learned a lot as well.
It's been a pleasure, and go for it is what I say to people. Go for it. This is a good time for it.
Thanks a million, Rita. Bye bye.
You're welcome. Bye bye.